Hello, I'm Rex, and welcome to Babel Planet. How many languages do you speak? If you're like most people, just one. If you live in some places or your family maybe is a certain way, maybe two or even three. If you're a language geek, the number can go all the way up to 30. But why are there so many languages? And why do some people speak the same language but still very differently? Let's find out. It all started thousands of years ago. We don't know exactly how or when, but a lot of people think that it was in Central Africa and it started to go on from there. How, do you ask? Migration, of course. If you live in a big country, you might notice that people speak different the more you move away from your home. When a big group migrates and some people stay behind, they will eventually start speaking in a different way. Maybe you remember that a few years ago, when things were great, people would call them epic. In the 90s, the word would be radical. Even earlier in time, we find terms like tubular or groovy. Meanwhile, amazing things in Britain are called brilliant. In America, they are awesome, and all these words can be understood as cool. But why does this happen? Well, have you ever tried to say groovy unironically? You'll sound like a grandpa, and if one thing is definitely not groovy, it's talking like your grandpa. So, as time goes on, people will always find new words to say the same things. Eventually, these words will stick around and replace the old words until it becomes normal to speak like that. Simple enough, right? Well, not exactly. While this kind of thing does happen all the time, it is not the only way a language changes. Otherwise, we would have a completely new language every generation. It is also not very practical if everyone has a different word for something. I mean, let's take potato fries, or as some people call them, chips, but maybe chips are crisps. But maybe crisps in other places are called another word. So eventually, we have people who will be talking about chips and you won't know if they mean fries or crisps or something entirely different, like those sparkly chocolate things that you put on cookies. And what would happen if we start to do this every 20 years or so? Soon we wouldn't be able to read or watch television or movies or video games or anything that our ancestors made, because we wouldn't understand anything of what they say. So, even if this is also a factor, it's not the one reason why we have lots of languages. The main reason is something that we call phonetic shift. This is what happens when a word or a sound or a part of a word starts being pronounced differently over time. For example, let's see one of the most common words in the English language, the word what. This is the way we pronounce it right now. And here you can see how it's written in the International Phonetic Alphabet, which we'll talk about in another episode. The oldest version of this word that we know of was in a really old language called Proto-Indo-European, or PIE for short. As time passed, people pronounced it just a tiny bit differently, without noticing. So after a few hundreds of years, it became what in Proto-Germanic, then huet in Old English, and just until a few years ago it was pronounced huat in modern English. The same Proto-Germanic word that we mentioned, what, became huaz in Old German until it slowly transformed into the word that is now pronounced vas. If we go back even further in time to the PIE root quos that we mentioned earlier, we can see that it turned into the Latin word quit that gave place to the French word qua, the Spanish and Italian que, the Portuguese qui, and the Romanian che, all of which can be translated as what. But let's talk more about this PIE thing. PIE, or Proto-Indo-European, was the parent language of all the languages that are now spoken in Europe and Western Asia, and although we have never seen it written or heard it spoken, we have a pretty good idea of what it sounded like because of something that we call internal reconstruction. It's sort of how, if you enter the kitchen after someone made a cake and see what ingredients are over the counter, you can figure out what the cake tasted like. You might not know exactly what it looked like, but you can take a pretty good guess and get it good. And now I'm wondering why they didn't use a pie for this example, but anyway, pie is only one of many language families, some that we know of, like the Niger-Congo family, and some that we only imagine, like the Amerind family, and that may or may not be real, but it's something that we don't know yet. These language families are the reason why you can travel to places that you've never even heard of, and still notice how some words or grammar structures are very similar to what you already know. But not all languages belong to these big families. Some, like Basque in Spain or Ainu in Japan, are what is called language isolates, which means that they don't have any family that we know of. So there might be a lot of different reasons for this. Maybe the language was completely created from scratch, like the Nicaraguan Sang language, which we'll talk about later. Or maybe this language had a big family, but wars or maybe a plague eliminated all the other people who spoke similar languages, so only that small culture remained. There are other families that are very small, like the Japonic languages, which are related with each other, but not with any other languages that we know. But in any case, currently there are about 3,000 languages on Earth, and all of them are very different and very rich in their own aspects and culture and grammar and vocabulary and concepts that cannot be explained in any other language. So why should anyone only speak one language? There are a lot of awesome things about languages that we can learn from and that we can learn to use. So why don't we use this opportunity to learn anything we can about them? Tell me, what's your favorite language? And why that one in particular? Let me know in the comments and we will all talk about it. In the next episode we are going to talk about the many writing systems in the world, so if you have any groovy suggestions, leave them here or on my Twitter. Please like and subscribe and follow me on social media so you can know when we're gonna have another one. If you collaborated with the subtitles for this to your own language, please leave your name here. Thank you for watching. Cheers to you all!